We are Digimi, and we are here in London with you. I'm Fab, James, and Jacob. So let's go very quickly to the content. Where we see that the biggest investment are in this moment, what are the area in which the big companies are investing? We are working with a lot of companies in the area of fintech, a lot around hyper-personalization in terms of consumer engagement, obviously artificial intelligence and distributed technology. We see a lot of work in the area of personalized health, and in particular, we see a lot of momentum in sharing our personal data, my heart rate, my specific chronic disease or specific pathology in the area of personal health. We see consumer IoT developing a lot, and smart cities. The problem in smart city is a bigger one, is around business modeling, and we sustain the initial cost. But all of this technology, all of this driver has something in common. They have personal data. Availability of rich consumer data with privacy, security, and consent. Today, we saw that, and we live every day, that the big American companies, people like us, developer that develop something, but they didn't have in mind that at the end, what they really developed was absolutely clever, potentially can be used not exactly how they intended to use it. And we have several examples, and we have several companies that we are working with that develop this kind of critical and disruptive use cases, but then they have a problem. How do I use the personal data of the individuals in an ethical and in a fair way that the individual is aware? So before I go ahead, I want to point out something that we were lucky to be part of in the UK. That is a study that the UK government supported around data portability. The study said that GDPR is clearly a problem. And how do we drive data portability? GDPR is an answer, is a potential answer, but is not yet the solution. You develop data portability, but after that, you have a series of constraints that are not completely bridging with the end user. And we have in each industry several areas that are trying to develop API to give back data or to give data portability to the individual, but they don't have yet the tools to provide data portability to the end. And the conclusion of this report, I repeat, from the UK government, was the concept of data mobility. So data mobility is the answer to this data portability. I will show you later the framework. I do apologize. You want to see line of code, you want to see use cases, but it's really important that I frame what you will see later with something more high level. This report that was delivered by this small management consultancy company on behalf of the UK government, in particular, it was not ICO, DCMS, the agency, the Department for Culture, Media and Sports, that is overseeing all the communication, media and sport, that is overseeing all the guidelines to the other agencies in terms of what to do with personal data. And this study identified some core issue. And then suddenly, the UK government said to this agency, yes, we deliver report, we deliver problem. We are always late with in ruling, in regulating the industry, while these developer startup or these big funds are going super fast in developing. How we can validate our statements around data mobility with something more tangible. And we were lucky enough to be involved in something that was a consequence of data mobility. We were involved in something that is called Data Mobility Infrastructure Sandbox. So they say, okay, they look at the market and they say, what are the platform and the player that have this vision of changing, or what I call the renaissance of data portability, who has the vision to provide a service, a platform that is really in line with data mobility. And we were lucky enough to be involved with these minor brands into this study. So these small brands, I was really ashamed when I was there producing the report with them, work with us, and they look at the architecture, and we identify several gaps. But now, let's go back, because this is really relevant for React Native. Why is relevant? I will tell you in a few seconds. The model with data portability is that you have a data exporter and a data importer. The individual very often, look, open banking, doesn't have the tool to see what is going on effectively. Then suddenly you have the individual giving the consent. GDPR is giving that, and then open banking again with open API is asking the consent, not in a standardized way. Then with data mobility, the UK government, and also now in California the same, in Singapore, interesting enough, there is something similar coming, is identifying a new role in society, that this role is the data facilitator. The data facilitator is acting on behalf of the individual to provide the tools to allow a user to give the consent for the data to be moved from one point to another point. There are data facilitators of different level of security. We have been positioned in the highest level of security, and I will tell you why, because we don't see, touch, and hold the data of the individual. Other models of other data facilitator have everything in a central location. They process all the data, and then they distribute the result. Now, I don't go in the detail of this report. I'm available to share it. You will find it online. If you Google this report, you will find it. It's on the website of these guys and also supported by ICO. So I'm not speaking of something that is not supported at government level, but it's something that was overseen by ICO, by several universities, by the Consumer International. The consumer itself work on this one. Now, let's go to the part that we know. A data facilitator is taking all your personal data in your digital life, because when you walk, I like the image of our chairman, and there is a video of our chairman that is, while walking in his life, is leaving a lot. His digital footprint is leaving a lot of digital data without his knowing. Okay, but this data belongs also to us. And so we have data in every category of our life. But this data belongs to us. How we are able to normalize it, structure it, and use it for our benefit. And that is the role of the data facilitator. We should have the tools to capitalize the data, read it, and then decide who we are sharing the data with and for what purpose. Okay, what is our job? Why we do this one? So we have a different role in this entire ecosystem of personal data sharing. The first one is a single source. So several developers are working with us simply because there is a single API, and then with a single API you can extract data from your medical records. Indeed, I don't remember the latest data, but in the UK we enable IMIs. If you go to your local GP practice, you will ask, I want to have my patient access credential, and we are one of the few partners that will show your medical data. I know Dionys is here with us, that is following, she is following the project, she is telling me, no, this is missing, this is missing. However, it was already a major milestone for us to be, we were fast track, in 6 months we were able to get that compared with the other that did, and frankly, I was really happy for the success of all these people in delivering that. I'm the fluffy guys, these guys are really delivering the good stuff. Then it's broad. It's broad because medical data, finance data, wearable data, what you listen, what you see, what you store, and you decide, you as an individual, you decide where you put this data. So I take all of this one, it is longitudinal, is in a single ontology, so an ontology that is growing. Also with your help, this ontology can grow. And this ontology, and this data with a common ontology, is sitting in the personal cloud of the individual. So the individual say, okay, I take all this data, I add all these sources, and suddenly I put it in my G Drive, or I put it in in OneDrive, or I put it in Dropbox. So everything is owned and stored by the individual. And is obviously, and that is why we are working with the big companies, private consent. So that is why I call it is the renaissance of personal data sharing. It's not something harvesting data. No one is harvesting anything. We do machine learning and we do artificial intelligence with a consent. And we are just a consent platform. Private sharing, edge processing, because then we provide, and they will tell you a little bit more around my fluffy speak on what we really do. But we provide SDKs, Android SDKs, iOS SDK, and then where probably we need a little bit of your competences around React Native. And several of our customer, partners, integrator, we have here tonight one company that is doing user research with us. They need to develop an application for other, and React Native is potentially the answer for them. So, and it's better for business, and it's rich data. So now let's finish the pidgin English to show something a little bit more. In a video you see some screen, and then I will go through some use cases, and then I will give you a couple of details in terms of high-level platform, and we go in the other details. So let's, I do apologize for the sound. What you see here is the application, but the application is not a core part of the application is the front end, the tools for the individual. It's evolving. Every release, people are contacting us. One of our partners in the US was screaming, my fault, in August, because I completely changed the interface. I released it, and they produce all the marketing material to help us doing the onboarding. They were so upset with us. I promise I will not do it anymore, but you know, we are changing. It's not, you see the client, I love the client, but what is the real capability is the platform behind. These are examples of applications that are developed on top of the platform, in which you can develop a lot of additional applications. Okay, this is a funny example that we use is TFP, and what we did is put all your social data in this application. Your social data is analyzed, and then I think it's better that I show you the video, and then I saw a couple of users that call me, and this is an example of app that can be developed on top of our platform. I do apologize for the swearing. So a group of doctors, GP, share this application between them. And you need to know that doctors, typically, they go from the university directly into a serious job. And two of these guys contact me and say, thank you, and thank you again. And they share with me the screen of how many times in their post they use very vulgar words, before and after. And I have to say, this application was really useful for them. There was a niche market. We are improving this application because we think for certain niche market in terms of analyzing the social, what you put. There was also a journalist contacting us in the part of the Me Too movement, and she was not aware that 5 years earlier, a friend of her, a social contact of her, made some comment that was not exactly in line with what she was writing. So again, that comment was captured and it was deleted from the social media. It is relevant, but think this is just an example of use case of something that you can apply in terms of analyzing the data. Another application that we develop, we work at the beginning of our setup of our capability. We decided to expand per market, and the first market where it was easy to expand was Iceland, very small market. So we did the integration with the healthcare system. And this is another example of application in which the personal data is used by the individual before traveling, but the data is extracted directly from the local healthcare system. I hate this music. I do apologize, but I really hate it. our product challenges so far, you saw 2 examples, but our product platform challenges are more at how I do enable the user experience of this application better. To give you an example, we were both in a meeting room yesterday to speak how I create deep linking into the consent platform, how I pass the data for analysis as soon as I receive the data. There is a big activity to work on our side. We have thousands of requirements and spec in this moment in order to improve the platform. So what you see are examples, but then a community of developers that have the tool to develop mobile application can go and deliver the next use case to our partners. Now, what are the benefits for our developer and partner and why they are working with us? As I already touched it, a single normalized API involving a lot of sources. We already proved that all the resources that you can allocate to deliver, we work with a couple of customers to develop POCs, and practically all the resources that you allocated to add sources or to do the normalization of the data or to get the data can be allocated to develop the application or develop the use cases. That was already a winning argument for our partner. Certainty of your investment, because if all this part of normalization of the data is already there, you don't invest. Okay, probably it's not an argument for several of you here, but potentially your employer, potentially the one that will give you the next job, are happier to have OPEX, operational cost, than CAPEX, uncertain CAPEX. And that is one of the arguments that we have very often with these companies. And then the data compliance, that is a big part, but I already showed you the stamp of in the UK that we had there. It's all about trust, it's all about be sure that the individuals, when they do a consent access, they come and they are sure that the data is there. For this, where we are investing a lot is, and we are working at design level with several agencies, not only in the UK, but in other parts of the world, to be sure that privacy by design is implemented. When you do a contract, you clarify exactly what is going on, what is processing the device, what is processed outside the device, who you're sharing the data with, and all the classical challenge that you have in private data sharing. If you have any question on the infrastructure, high capacity, multi-layer security, all around centric data protection, push and pull data services. I didn't show you, but for several projects, we are more working on they push the data into us. So image that you have today, download your data, that is a completely unsecure mechanism. Giving the responsibility to individual to be responsible for their data in their PC is completely not a viable option for data portability. However, in order to have the stamp of data portability, several companies are doing that. This is not an option, it's exposing the data of the user, particularly if their data is medical data or is relevant social data. And then we have the SDK. Our dream is to become the private data sharing infrastructure. That is where we think, and to be regulated into real time. Why? Because it's a healthier economy in terms of personal data. And now, after I've done the fluffy part, we have the part in which we tell a lot more about what you are here for, so why it is so important for you.
So hi, I'm James. I am head of product delivery, so delivering all these thousands of specs that Fab throws my way. And
I'm Jacob. I'm one of the mobile team leads at DigiMe, so driving all of this development process forward is my day-to-day, it's my bread and butter, so to speak.
And at DigiMe, we welcome developers, just like you guys. I did used to be a developer myself. Started off in ActionScript. You all remember that? Yes. And then I moved over to the dark side. But Jacob's still enjoying it.
Yeah, very much still enjoying it. Rightly so as well. Hopefully you guys can all agree with me on that fact.
Yeah, and obviously we're very, very passionate for development and what you guys can bring to the table. So we're going to show you a quick video. This is it's a little bit old, so some of our UI has changed, but this is targeted at developers such as yourselves. you might notice this lack of React Native here, but we will get to that. So these are some of the apps you can build, or have been built. Okay, so your data is effectively fragmented. You've got it split across different medical sources, finance, social, and this image of pushing it through a meat grinder might look a bit over the top. But, yeah. But effectively what we're doing is pulling that data together in one place that you own and a place that you control. And that's as a user. As a developer, we want to empower you guys to access that data should a user want to share it with you.
So we treat data as a hierarchy within DigiMe and the context that DigiMe brings to developers. So I think to best visualize this, I'll give you guys a couple of scenarios. So if you're looking to use a user's personal data within your app, there might be a number of approaches you take to accomplish this. So let's take, for example, a nice simple scenario. You want to analyze a user's listening habits across a variety of sources, perhaps Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer. There are various other ones as well, Amazon Music, for example. You need to aggregate the data from these various source sets, and you need to analyze it and gain useful insights out of that to then derive your own kind of logic and give the user an output, something back, perhaps a curated music playlist. So you've now got potentially upwards of 4 services to connect to, each with a different kind of data set, different ontology, different mappings, and now you've got to try and somehow make sense of all of that and pull it together into some kind of unified UI. Seems like a bit of a nightmare if you ask me, and anyone who's been there and tried that may well agree. So we tend to structure data in some kind of hierarchy. Now, the idea is that every new source that comes into DigiMe fits into this somewhere. So we define an ontology, and that ontology acts as the baseline for all new sources to be integrated into, which means when you then go to fetch the data, for example, as we were saying, music data, it's in an easy-to-read, simplified and uniform format no matter where it comes from. And that's the real thing that we're offering here, that as developers is definitely of benefit to you guys, because we're streamlining the means of getting the data from the provider into the third-party app. So these building blocks all go into the central pot, the P-Cloud. Fab touched on it earlier, we'll get to that in more detail shortly. And then this gets arranged by a number of kind of algorithms and mapping systems to our unified ontology, which is then spat out the other end in the form of unified data to developers and consumers.
Yeah, and if we accidentally go into our code names, internal code names, such as P-Cloud, heard you throw in there, it's just, we say day in, day out. Yeah. Personal cloud, so we mean Dropbox, OneDrive, Google Drive, that's where your data is stored. It's not stored in DigiMe. We do not hold that data. We're processing across multiple sources, so Fab mentioned UK NHS earlier, it might be the US medical system as well. We're basically mapping it onto a unified ontology. In the case of medical, we are mapping on FHIR, which is the universal standard, which means a vaccination to you guys is a vaccination. It's not a different object type. If you happen to want to do a medical app for the UK or you want to do a medical app for the US, you can make a medical app for the world, which is amazing.
Yeah, on the subject of unifying data sets from across different sources, we've now taken this example of music and we've got an easy-to-use API and an SDK for those who wish to use the SDK. And we've made it easy for you guys to get that unified data set and gain some real insights from that quickly. But let's not stop at music. Let's go and talk about something a little bit more tightly controlled, like finance data. So anyone who's tried to integrate with finance data, whether that's through various third parties or the new open banking standard, will know that there's a number of hurdles that you may face as a developer. The notable one is FCA approval. So that's the Financial Conduct Authority. They regulate all kind of uses of financial data in and out and transforming that and displaying it, etc. So that's a hurdle in itself, attempting to obtain the clearance from them. Now with DigiMe, we somewhat take that away from you. We've done the heavy lifting. We've done the heavy lifting. We're in the process of obtaining this clearance at the moment, and as such, when the output comes to you guys, it's ready, and the regulations that you guys will have to follow is significantly less.
Yeah. But you still have to have a use case that is compliant with the FCA. Okay, so FCA, if you are processing and sending the data, you need to have FCA approval. Sorry, I intervened on that part.
No, that's absolutely fine. And same goes for medical. If you guys wanted to go direct to NHS to get the data, it's going to take you an average of 2 years to access it. From us, you can be up and running in a couple of hours, which is amazing. So enough about data, let's move on. Security. Now, we're not security experts, but we employ the best in the world. So Jacob's going to do his best to talk through this slide.
We certainly do. So naturally at DigiMe, we're dealing with users' personal data. That is things that are identifying them on a personal level, and ultimately things that they want to keep safe, especially from the likes of Facebook and various other large conglomerates that have been doing rather unsavoury things with them in recent times. To do this, we employ military-grade security. So this is the same level of tech that you'll find in the MOD. It's the same level of tech that you'll find in government. And to be quite honest, it's the best in the business. So from an authentication point of view, we employ the use of SSL trust anchors from top signing authorities. And that really just allows the DigiMe apps to be absolutely confident in what they're talking to, and also allows third parties and developers coming in to be confident that the people they're getting this data from are in fact reputable and it hasn't been meddled in some way. Now on the subject of meddling, as James touched on, all of the data that a user contributes to their DigiMe library is stored outside of DigiMe. We don't touch that, we don't hold it. The user defines where they want to put that. We touched on the term pCloud, that is an internal term, but what we mean by that is some kind of cloud storage solution. So your Dropbox, your Google Drive, your OneDrive, nicely decentralised and very much in the user's control domain rather than ours. I think that's one of the main things that users particularly like about the DigiMe platform, is the fact that we can't see what you do with the data, only the user holds the key. On the subject of holding the key, when a library is created, a password's created, and we use high-level key derivation functions to generate a key off of that, which is then exchanged for another set of keys with the back end, and effectively all of the data that goes into a library is signed and compressed and encrypted, and then encrypted again when it goes into the pCloud, because they handle their own systems in that sense. This means that, well, even if we had the credentials to get to their pCloud, it would mean nothing to us. It's just a bunch of binary data. The real beauty is the fact that the user is at all times convinced and very much in control of who can read that, because, well, they only then hold the key.
Thank you very much. So, we've talked about where the data comes from, we talked about data normalization, we talked about the security. And, the user owns the data, and can then onward share it with you guys, the developers, should they choose to. Now we've got the developer portal, which is your space at DigiMe. This is where you can get in touch with us, and this is where you can get going if you want to build apps off the back of DigiMe.
Or where we have currently partner and developer that are developing projects, and where sometimes we need capabilities, mobile application capabilities to work on. So we have several partners that don't have these competencies.
Absolutely, and in there you can find full reference docs for our ontology, explaining all the different object types, service IDs, etc. Anything else you want to say on that one?
So we're always working to improve docs. We pride ourselves in working very closely with developers, and naturally when integrating with a platform such as this, we want it to be as pain-free as possible for you guys. As such, any feedback anyone has on docs and general integration process is taken into account as a priority, and we're always striving to improve this and make that journey really as easy as it possibly can be.
Translate from a product point of view, I'm not giving them a pain to the top quality documentation in terms of format, but I want the right content to allow developers to work. Sometimes we don't look at the format, but we look at the quality of the content to be able to grant a work. And there is always a developer at the end of the line in order to give you the piece of code that you can integrate and finish your work.
Definitely. We're very available, very reachable, as we'll show later.
Sometimes with new releases, the documentation is finishing.
Okay, so getting started, as I said, you can get started with us in a couple of hours, which is amazing. First thing you need to do is go to developers/register, where you can get hold of an app ID, and then you can start looking at building your own app. you also need a private sharing contract. So the contract will explain how much data you want from the user, which services you might want from the user, which time length or time period you might want it over. That is visually displayed in this contract to the user, so they can see exactly what they're sharing at any time.
And to clarify this one, to Play, we allow access to all the categories and all the data, but obviously there are certain data and certain category that we need to work together. In the past, our partner asked everything, but potentially we need to work together because there are certain categories in which we also need to discuss together who we authorize and what is the consent with this with third party. So we need to work together. Obviously, to allow to play with you, we start together and we play. But then there is a moment in which, before you go live, we need to have a discussion around the use case if you use certain categories, like for instance, medical data and education.
So sample data. I mentioned earlier US healthcare. You may not have access to that, but it doesn't mean you can't build an app because we provide sample data for all our sources in our sandbox environment, which means you can go and play very, very quickly. We've got libraries pre-populated with finance, medical, social, you name it, we've got it. So, what's this got to do with React Native?
Yes, as I said, the statement to manage expectation, we did a demo on React Native. All your contribution is welcome. To see that you're working better is welcome, but we wanted to show some of our partners that they can develop app in React Native. And then please have your hands dirty, play with it, and tell us your input. Show the example of what we have.
Yeah, so full disclosure, as Fab touched on, we are very much a mobile-first business, but React Native is a fairly new concept to us. The DigiMe client apps are developed natively in Swift and Kotlin, but this is a really exciting technology that's started to become more prevalent in the industry, and you guys are very much an example of that. We want to invest in this quite heavily in terms of better supporting the developers that choose to build on our platform with React Native, of which some of the examples we will share with you in just a moment. Now, Fab mentioned a demo. We do have a React Native SDK available. It's very much in demo/pre-release stage. There's a lot of ironing out to do, and really, we want everybody's help with this. We want DigiMe to be very much a community-driven project, particularly when it comes to our open source SDKs, because that naturally follows the open source ethos, and that's something that we very much believe in. And as such, please give it a spin and give us your feedback, because we would absolutely love to hear how to further minimise that flow and those pain points for you guys as React Native developers going forward.
So, as a company, we're starting to invest a lot more in React Native because you realise there's people like you out there who want to build code once for multiple platforms. So, as Jacob mentioned, we do have this starter project. This will get you going. We have got existing apps which partners have built, which we'll show in a minute, using React Native. We definitely want to invest more in this. We want contributors as well. So if you guys want to, check the project out, raise pull requests, etc., you're more than welcome. We will welcome it. So how does it work?
This should be a pretty standard model for you guys by now, having integrated with various third parties. We have a native iOS and Android SDK currently in Kotlin and Objective-C respectively. Now, the React Native SDK takes this and effectively builds the bridge between the JavaScript/TypeScript and the native code. Again, this is a pattern you guys have been well used to. We are potentially looking at branching out into a completely JavaScript/TypeScript SDK and dropping the bridge, and that's something we'd love to hear everybody's thoughts on, because again, it's about making it as stress-free as possible for the developers that are going to be building on us, i.e. you guys. The bridge effectively takes the requests that come from the React Native app and proxies them through this bridge and then delivers them into the native SDKs, and vice versa with the response. Again, pretty much standard. You guys will have seen this stuff before, so I won't bore you with the details.
Now we've got an example of an app that has been built on React Native. Fab seems to be running away, even though he was about to talk about this.
Oh yes, it's true. This is a partner of us in the US. They are launching the service next week at the My Data conference in Helsinki. We have been working with them in the last 6 months. What they do is very interesting because they connect all the sources through our platform. We are the only technology to enable them to do this research.
and they do market research insights in the US only for the time being, using our platform. And they have several distribution brands that are interested to do market study. I'll show you a video now that we have in the next page, but the most important message, it is built using React Native. But let's show what they do in the following video.
Oobd is a community of people and companies creating a way for you to take control of your data and earn income from the value it generates, starting in the $76 billion market research and insights industry. Companies want to study things like which types of coffee people who do yoga drink most often, what clothing brands appeal to people who listen to country music, or how travel affects the kinds of restaurants people prefer. They don't want to know about you personally, just groups of people like you. Whether you're a mom, a gamer, a software developer, or a runner, or all of the above, insights from your data are valuable, potentially worth thousands of dollars a year. Oobd's private match technology protects your privacy and identity. It also ensures you only see studies that are uniquely suited for you, which means you aren't wasting time qualifying for studies or filling out long surveys your data can answer. Once you select a study, your data does almost all of the work. With a simple swipe, data you have collected about yourself from apps and accounts like your social media, wearables, and credit cards is analyzed right on your device. Only the anonymized, aggregated findings, like which coffee brands you purchase most and how much you spend monthly on them, are used to complete the study. Oobd uses the most advanced data encryption and security technology to safeguard you and your data. Your data remains locked in a secure data vault called DigiMe, where you hold the only key. You decide when to unlock your vault and privately share insights with studies. Some studies include a few brief survey questions. Companies want to know additional things like why you prefer one brand over another, or what you think about a new product. These studies generally pay even more. You'll earn cash and Oobd points every time you swipe to complete a study. Transfer cash immediately to your bank account, and as our community grows, there will be more and more exciting ways to cash in your points for valuable benefits. To get started, go to oobd.com. It takes less than 10 minutes to set up. Then sit back and watch your data go to work for you.
So this is the proposition of Oobd in the US, built on React Native. If you have any question, we can go into the details.
Oobd is a...
Okay, I go back. We really need to, I would like to have a more interactive session over a beer or later to answer any question they have. We are a private data sharing company. That is what we do. We are practitioners in this space since 9 years, and let's speak with us if you're interested to do more in this space. Thank you.